and click the and that. Okay, so thank you so much, guys, for having me. Obviously, it's great being part of these. Just a quick question: are you able to see my screen still? Hello.
Yes, you can see your screen.
Okay, sawa, sawa. Okay, makes sense. Yeah, sawa. So my name is Kelvin, and I am a learning support specialist, a teacher by profession, actually, a special needs teacher, training and in practice. And I have been fortunate enough to work in special needs schools, inclusive schools, small inclusive schools, here like large inclusive schools. And right now I'm in Tanzania. The past 6 years, I've worked in international schools, which has been great for me. And I'm also fortunate to have worked within most of the countries in East Africa. So I worked in Kenya for 3 years and I spearheaded a program, set it up in a big international school that's very inclusive. And I moved to Kampala, stayed there for 2 years. And again, I structured an inclusive program in a huge international school where we are structuring from a program for kids who are from 2 years all the way to 19 years. So it was like a huge, huge age range to just ensure all programs are running. And now I've recently moved to Tanzania, and the move was because of family reasons. So yeah, which is nice. I'm enjoying my stay in Arusha, and it's lovely. I've been part of this group for a long time, but I don't think I've ever had like conversations. So it was nice when I moved to Arusha, when Caudience reached out and she was like, yeah, I hear you here. Because we have a mutual friend who was quite excited when she heard that she was my boss at one point and she had I moved to Arusha. She was quite excited and wanted me to connect with Caudience. So I'm pleased to be part of this conversation. And yeah, that's a brief bit around myself. So I guess the conversation today is stigma in schools, creating a positive environment, or rather, positive environments for all students. So you notice there I changed the discussion was for neurodiverse students, but then I changed it to for all students because when we look at inclusion, we're looking at inclusion for all. So and I think I love starting with the quote. And my biggest one that I've learned through practice is neurodiversity is not about fixing students, it's about fixing environments. Now, this image I'm showing you, I've been given consent to show you. And when I share the slides, it will not be there. But this image is an image showing a child who had complex needs. And this specific student was struggling with so many things. We're talking about emotional regulation. There was so many bits around learning in the classroom, self-regulation. He had a lot of sensory stimulation that was going on while he was both in and out of the classroom. But this picture, every time I see it, I smile because this was a reading session that they usually did with the teacher for 20 minutes. And he loved books. And one of the most inclusive thing that they did in class is have the student sit with the teacher and flip the book page by page as they were identifying things and they were reading for the class. So I think that was quite inclusive, and it's one of the exact thing we're talking about, fixing an environment to ensure that it's accommodating the student. So that's always a good highlight for me. Now, please, you must stop me if you have a question before I move on. But we can always do the questions later. So I just wanted to chat a little bit about stigma and what that looks like. And in the context of education, stigma is just a simple definition of that is just a negative belief or assumption about neurodiverse learners. And these is different across different schools. And if you're lucky like me, who's been across different schools in different countries, different cultures, different settings, you'll notice that obviously these will show up in different ways. And one of the most common one is labeling or teasing. And I added that bit due to lack of awareness, because I have noticed kids are very malleable. And once you are able to have conversations around awareness with them, then you can see there's a reduction of these teasing and labeling. So that's why I did, due to lack of awareness. And the next one, and again, the next two are mostly you'll see them with teachers, and today I'm looking at it from an educator perspective. So you'll see it from that perspective of teachers, where there's exclusion from high achieving groups or limited differentiation for activities that are being done in class, with the assumption that this child is not able to access that. So that's another form of it that could show around in the classroom. And the next one, again, this comes from a very nice point or nice place in our hearts. It's over accommodation or just subtle pity rather than empowering the student who has struggles. So I just narrowed that down to like three things, or three most common ways that we see stigma around school settings, around classroom settings, and yeah, labeling, exclusion, and obviously over accommodation is one piece. So we will look at how do we create positive environments. And again, guys, this is a huge conversation. It's a huge conversation, and I cannot narrow it down to 30 minutes. And I'm trying as much to just go through these probably by 8:30 or 8:25. Then we can have a whole discussion, because I know it can lead to like conversations and conversations around how do we create positive environments. And why I say that is because different contexts have different we'll come up with different ways of creating environments. And obviously we must remember that we have a lot of barriers within our immediate environment, within our settings, and some of the barriers are things that can be solved, while others are things that really are out of our control as educators within the classroom, and even as leaders within schools. So I wanted us to start a little bit about like how do we create positive environments. And the first part, I want to look at it from an institution-focused point of view. And the first bit is promoting peer awareness and classroom discussions around empathy. So I'll move just a little bit into something that's in psychology that's called theory of mind. And every time I've worked with students, whether it's during intervention, whether we are talking about social awareness, social skills, and executive functioning, or even emotional regulation, I do love referring to the theory of mind, especially when the student has a level of understanding that they are able to comprehend complex conversations. Sorry, guys, it's raining heavy, so if you hear like rattling noise, please just know it's the rain. So the first bit around theory of mind is the kids being able to understand that every other person has like their own beliefs and their own way of thinking, and we are all neurodiverse. And it doesn't mean that just a neurodiverse student is a student who has autism, or is a student who has ADHD, or a student with dyslexia. No, we are all neurodiverse. Our way of thinking, and sometimes I'll even do an activity that will show how we respond to something. And I love doing this when I'm doing teacher training. And I'll just start with a quick activity where people will respond in different ways. And then we'll be like, yeah, but it was the same thing. And we are all presuming, or our perception right now is no one is neurodiverse in this space. However, we reacted to this particular thing differently. So what does that mean? It means we are all neurodiverse. So I think promoting that awareness and having discussions with people and especially within like the school setting. And again, that's why I'm saying it's institution focused, because this is something that it can be school wide, whether it's during PSHE or during whatever program you guys do within your school setting to support the growth and development of kids. This can be done there, and there's a lot of discussions. And as I said, kids are malleable. So during these discussions, it's very interesting what kids pick and what kids notice that should be done differently within their setting, just by having that discussion. And you'll always hear them coming to conclusion and saying, "Oh, actually, we think this should change." So it's one of the best, or rather one of the great ways to create a positive environment. So the second one is ensuring that there are group norms that celebrate effort and not just academic ability. And I know, again, this is a big conversation around ability, and we have had schools like my former school moved away from using the word ability, and we've had like a huge shift globally, where we have seen people shift conversations around ability as well to celebrating more celebrating effort of the kid, because then you're celebrating the strength of the child and not the struggles. And we look at that when you're looking at the classroom strategies. And I think these norms usually will create a culture that's actually very inclusive and positive. So when as a school, and I believe and I know that shifting cultures within school settings is very difficult. And especially when you've had a team of people who have been there for a long time, and could when you're shifting to an inclusive culture and trying to ensure there's a positive environment, sometimes it could feel like there's too much effort being put and slow progress. However, I feel like little bits and small wins are usually a way of just celebrating that growth as we progress towards creating that environment. So then the third one is encouraging just low cost inclusive practices. I know, and I talk about this from perspective that I've been in the senior leadership position in school, and I've been in middle leadership position, and I've been a teacher. I know budgets are a big thing, especially within schools, where you really want something that's super cool, and you think, oh man, if I get this, it would be like a fix to so many things. However, there are so many low-cost inclusive practices that can really change the way that the environment looks to ensure that it's positive. And some of these could be visual aids, just flexible grouping within the classroom, even just varied response methods within the classroom. It's not just that thing of raise your hand, I pick you and then you respond. And again, this can be another just discussion by itself about how do you have inclusive practices within the classroom. But just ensuring that you have low cost, very creative, very learner centered, inclusive practices is a way that an institution can really help to create a positive environment within the class. And partnering, and again, this last point about partnering with specialists or NGOs is for those settings that do not have like specialists within the school. So I've been in schools that did not have like speech therapist and an occupational therapist within the school. However, we partnered with those who are working with the kids within the school to provide even professional development to parents, professional development to teachers, or even to the inclusion assistants, or those probably some people know them by shadow teacher. So, and I've also been in settings, and I visited a school in Johannesburg, and this setting had like psychologists in, uh, like occupational therapists, not just one, like a team of them, and speech therapists. So you're looking at having all resources within the school. So there was a lot of things just going on within that school when it comes to creating a positive environment. However, I think it's important to start where you're at as a school. And if you do not have these resources available to you, then going to the immediate neighborhood and figuring out, okay, who do I contact? Who are some contacts? And I'll use the case of Arusha. When you're within Arusha, who can I reach out to who is very good at occupational therapy? And then you have a contact and you're like, okay, good, we can bring this person, which speech therapist is around. And sometimes it could be a struggle not finding one within your immediate environment. So it could be even thinking around, do we get someone and who could do like a virtual training session? Because we have moved, the world has become a global community. I mean, right now I'm in Kenya and each one of you is in a different space and we are all sitting together having this conversation or listening to me rather. I think it's just being creative around how we partner with people and ensuring that we're able to get these awareness brought up or rather raised within our school settings. So that's all about it when it comes to institution focus. Now, again, some of these strategies, when you look at the leadership focused, again, they might go into the institution or the classroom, but I just wanted to point a few things that if leadership focused on, it will really push that creation of positive environments. And the first one is just enhancing the teacher capacity through professional development. We have, and I think we are growing when it comes to professional development, or rather understanding inclusion. I think as a community, as an East African community at large, speaking from being within different cities or areas within East Africa, I think we have grown so much when it comes to the understanding of inclusion, and we will continue to grow. So I think as leaders or in whatever capacity you are, if you're able to have a discussion with your leaders within the school to ensure that there is professional development around neurodiversity, it kind of helps to create that positive environment. And I know sometimes it could be limited to not having someone available to come and do that. I have found self-study sessions to be very interesting because then you have the internet nowadays and it has lots of resources. So you can just go and say, we will be implementing, let's actually use the second point, implementing universal design for learning, the UDL. So there's a whole website called CAST and another one UDL that has like lots of information about UDL. So it's saying the next few weeks as a team, we will be talking about UDL. We will be sitting in groups. We will be reading these papers. We will be having discussions. We will be seeing how this applies within our setting. And we will try to see how these can help us to make learning accessible for all learners. So I think it's just being creative, again, being creative with what we have. And the third point is involving parents. So part of a big piece that actually helps when it comes to growth of kids who are neurodiverse is ensuring the parents are part of the journey. And I've been in spaces where I've had schools that don't involve parents, and parents will only drop their kids and pick them up. And I know from a leadership point of view and being inside the school, I understand why some schools will do that. However, there are more cons than pros when it comes to doing such an approach. But when it's an open door policy where parents are really on board and you can have like difficult conversations with parents, it's usually very, very nice. And sure, it will be difficult at times, and sometimes you'll have conversations that could be probably like, yeah, you really don't want to have, and you could spend lots of hours and lots of time discussing one specific being raised by parents. But sometimes, and actually most times, I've come to realize that it actually has more pros than cons when you involve parents in the learning of the students. And when you have a structured system within your school, this could be through ILPs, it could be through whatever, if you guys call them IEPs, PLPs, whatever language you use within your school, this could be one of the ways that you could do that. So then assemblies or storytelling to just humanize the learning difference is another way that leaders could just lead when it comes to creating positive environments. And I'm fortunate. So if you don't know, I work at Brayburn Arusha. So I'm in the primary setting, and I'm very fortunate to have a head and I'll just mention her in absentia. So who really leads when it comes to storytelling to ensure that she's modeling the learning differences. And I was fortunate to sit in a space where she was talking about emotional regulation and feelings and discussing how to regulate yourself. And it was very interesting just seeing how stories can really just make the kids curious and also bring a level of understanding to the kids without really having to break it down and have like complex slides for the kids. So it's one of the other ways that you can use as a leader or in whatever capacity in your school setting to promote inclusion. Then classroom focused. Again, I only put four, but this can be a discussion for. I have had trainings where I've done like hours on just this bit, and I've had like a series of sessions through weeks where we just focused on this. But I just wanted it to narrow it down to like four key things that if we just picked, it will be just so nice. So focusing on individual learning without isolation. And I'll explain this a little bit. And it links to that point where we said, when you have a child where he or she is being excluded by being provided with limited differentiation with the activities that they are doing in class, then you'll notice that that is a form of isolation. So when you focus on individualized learning, it doesn't mean that the child has to do something different. They could be accessing the same content that is being accessed within, or the same concepts being learned within the class, but at the level that the child is at. For example, if they're learning about let me use, if they're doing history within East Africa, or maybe geography within East Africa, and the child is not able to read a text about the Rift Valley, it could be providing visuals and audio visuals about the same thing, and even them labeling or pointing and showing where is the valley, where all these physical features. So it's just ensuring that the child is accessing the same concepts, but at the level at which they are at when it comes to their academic level or their cognitive skills. Then creating peer mentor programs is very, very important because kids learn so much from each other. And that's why the world is moving towards inclusion. And there's been like a huge conference. Just actually this month, there was a conference in Kazakhstan, and it was around inclusion and all that at large. It had some trickles of inclusion, and the bit around inclusion is it's very, very empowering because kids who are neurodiverse learn so much from just having peers who are mentoring them. And I'll just have a quick focus on social skills, which is a big piece that sometimes, and I've done intervention sessions on social skills, turn taking, sharing, and all that. And I've sat down 20 minutes to teach a child explicitly on that skill. However, generalizing a skill that has been taught explicitly to the child will only happen when peers are involved within an inclusive setting. So it's very, very important to understand that about inclusion. Yes, Cowden, sorry.
You have a few minutes to go before we open the floor.
Yes, so it's only this is the last slide, and then so it should be 3 minutes, and that's it.
Okay.
So
no
then
worries.
using assistive tech is another thing that you can use to normalize like the environment. So again, this is a way of showing that kids learn differently and ensuring that it's a norm within the classroom. And language is the last bit that's very, very important. And I feel like if we all, as educators, if we all worked bit by bit every day on the language that we use, inclusion would be miles ahead by the end of one whole year, academic year. And such an example is you'll often hear teachers say, oh, that child struggles with, but changing that or tweaking that to, hey, Calvin learns best when he does these or his strengths. So using a strength-based approach would be that. And lastly, partnerships. So partnerships are a solid way of creating positive environments within our schools. So and I'll just if you partner, let's say parents, teachers, consultants, and schools, just forming a solid partnership, you'll see the parents are able to share their child's strengths and not only the concerns, because then they're coming from a point of, oh, actually, this is what they're best at. And maybe you could engage them or rather use these strengths. They could inform you when you're teaching or when you're planning to know how to involve them. Then teachers obviously practicing reflective teaching and continuous learning. And I think also teachers being able to share the child's strength, because we also reckon that we're living in times where parents are busy and they are busy with work. So sometimes they could miss some bits and pieces of their kids. So sharing that and having consultants who provide support, coaching, or just giving you an understanding of what's happening with the kids. Then I think schools at large embedding inclusion in the culture, not just policy for the checks, but just embedding that inclusion. And I think an example is, and I've been in two spaces where we have had these, just having like a group that's called Inclusion Champions. And these are like teachers who come together with parents and who lead like small awareness initiatives. It could be like coffee mornings, and they just have a conversation around inclusion, or it could be like an awareness day about Down syndrome, and they bring like different snacks to share. And I was in a space where a parent would be very happy to have a discussion with all the kids and share the journey about their child. So I think these partnerships are usually very, very solid. So I think this is the point where my conversation ends and I open it up to discussion. And I think one of the things that as we are having this discussion, I was thinking it would be nice if we can also center around one small action I'll take to reduce stigma in my setting will be. So I'll encourage, if you're jumping onto a conversation, if you can start with these and say, hey, one small setting action I'll take to reduce stigma in my setting will be, and then you can jump in on the conversation. Back to you, Nsape or Cowdens. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Kelvin. This was really a powerful presentation. And I can actually start with my favorite pick. Your opening statement that diversity is not about fixing students, but fixing the environment. That really sets the tone, and it's a very powerful statement, I believe. So we will open up a room for discussions and questions. And I will quickly read through the messages on the chat before looking for the hands. So Philbert says, this is a nice presentation. And Cowden says she loves it as well. How she wishes all educators could hear this. Of course, this is always our cry. We really wish to have more people attending the sessions. She says the theory of mind is awesome. Awesome. That is very nice. So now moving to the raised hands, and Vincent, Dr. Vincent, you are welcome. You can unmute yourself and put up your questions or contributions. Dr. Vincent.
Thank you. Mine, I'll just go to direct to the questions. I hope I'm audible enough. Now, this discussion has surrounded, has talked about inclusion, inclusivity, which is fine, and in different setups. Or maybe the focus was basically in the school setup, let me say it per se, which, our presenter, Kevin, focused on specifically the schools, which is perfect because most of the children are falling in that setup. However, in the next, maybe the next presentations to come, we can have somebody maybe open it up so that we can have different settings, because some of the questions that I'll ask are going beyond the school. Like, for instance, Kevin has talked about institutions having different personalities or personnel such as occupational therapists, physiotherapists, speech and language pathologists. We can have somato kind of therapists within the school setup. Can have G&T, guidance and counseling. But again, how does this come about? How can it be enshrined within the context that you are currently, Kevin? That now, within the context that you are in Tanzania, how can school embrace this? That's the first approach. Let's take schools which are maybe public schools, because this is the bone of contention. International schools, there's some kind of awareness, but the big gap that we have are schools that are set up within the government or public or local authority schools, which might not even have policies in as far as inclusion is concerned, which maybe some countries are still struggling to come up with policies to implement in as far as inclusions are concerned. So that is something that we can have a discussion about. And then the theory of the mind is very important and very good. But how can this be? How can we bring it in a context or a different context? How can we manage it with the fact that let's put awareness constant, let's hold it constant, that people are aware about this, but how can we embrace the theory of the mind? That is, how can you embrace the thoughts and feelings, the beliefs that people have towards inclusion? Whereas we put awareness as a constant factor that people are aware, but now how do we bring it up? That's a critical question. It's a kind of a philosophical, but I know you can work on it. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Just let me quickly respond to that, and I love that whole bit that you're picking. It's around the public schools, and I have engaged with public schools in Kenya, public schools in Uganda, and I'm hoping to engage with like different providers within public schools in Tanzania. And I think the biggest piece is ensuring that the stakeholders are aware of this. And we have great people who are fronting inclusion, who are really having weighted discussions around these. And just again, to look at the bigger picture. So the team, and we had so many people go to Kazakhstan from all over the world, and they had gone for a global inclusion summit. Well, I don't remember if it was called that, but they were looking at so many things that would come down to inclusion. And it was about well-being. There was just so much around that, and neurodiversity being one piece. And the main aim of this is for them to go back to the G20 summit, which is happening, I think, later in South Africa. And again, presenting to the leaders, the global leaders, to tell them, hey, we need you to ensure that the government, or to put a policy that says the government needs to put budgets towards inclusion. So I think these are wider conversations, and international schools are leading in these because they have data and evidence, and they're coming back to say, hey, we have done this for 30 years. And we have this data that's showing that there's been growth and progress, and we have kids who are now adults, and we can see how successful of lives they have led because we practice inclusion in their whole life. So I think that's a big piece around conversations. When you talked about personnel within the school setups, obviously, again, we are in a space that the education system has not evolved in the last 50 or 100 years. So we're still using the same some of the same strategies that are being used in the 1900s when it comes to teaching and delivery of content in the classroom. So I do think, and that's why there was a point I said, partnering with people, specialists who are outside your immediate environment would be great, because as of now, the education system is really it's one of the areas that really needs to grow and has not really grown as much as other industries. So I think partnering, when you get to partner with people, it would be great. So then lastly, the theory of mind. How do we ensure that it's more conversant within the setting of these schools? And I think it goes down to the people who are writing curriculums. And I speak as a person who has helped, again, when Kenya was shifting towards the CBC curriculum. I was part of someone who was writing a book, and there was lots of conversations around that. And I could see how she was embedding whatever conversations we were talking around inclusion, embedding that into her book. And they wrote this book. There were a couple of them, and this book was finally approved by the ministry, and it's now part of the CBC curriculum that's happening in Kenya. And you see, that's a win, because then when you look at the differentiation inside that book, it actually has levels of differentiation that now someone in like northern part of Kenya is able to do because they are guided. So I do think going down to curriculum and looking at the people who are writing down these curriculums within the Ministry of Education and having just honest conversations with them, maybe that's a good start. It might not, it might be slow at the beginning, but sure, it's one step at a time, and eventually you'll be able to do that. I know I've not answered fully your question, but I hope I've touched a bit about that.
Maybe can I add something to your answer,
Yes.
Kevin?
Yeah.
I also see there is a concern regarding the same from Caroline. Caroline is saying, thank you for the wonderful presentation. Like everyone is saying, it's really difficult in public schools. I'm wondering, is it to do with the population or because it kind of working in private and international schools? How do we start inclusion in a school where the school leadership does not appreciate the importance of inclusion in school? Since we react differently and perceive information differently. And Barbara is saying, have you ever had cases where parents don't agree that their kids are neurodiverse at the start? And okay, so Kevin,
Okay.
you will answer those questions. But I wanted to add something to what, Kevin, you said. And also the concern of Carol and Vincent. I think we are going to get there. It's not taking a day for public schools. I just want to give a short example that happened this year during the Teachers' Day, Teachers' Recognition Day, which is 5th of October. TFFT, it's the Foundation for Tomorrow. It's a big NGO here in Tanzania. The Joshua Foundation is another NGO here in Tanzania. Also, we collaborated as Dyslexia Tanzania. So the three of these of us, this organization, the TFFT, Joshua Foundation, and Dyslexia Tanzania, we convened. We had a convention for teachers, a teachers' convention. We brought together teachers from public schools, and we had 200 teachers, and of course a few from private schools. And we had a very good convention, and the government was part of this meeting. We had leaders from Tanzania Institute of Education, TAI. And the convention, we are talking about inclusion. We talked about the curriculum that we have. We also have now CBC in Tanzania, curriculum-based education. And we learned actually that curriculum-based, competence-based curriculum is a tool towards CBE, curriculum-based education. So here, in such a setting, we are trying to bring in partners and who can push this inclusion, subject to even the public schools. We agree that public schools, there are classes which are very big, up to 60 students. But when a teacher is informed, it's better than a teacher who is not informed at all. So we will get there, but it needs collaborations. It needs all of our efforts, NGOs, CSO, parents, everybody trying to do something. Rome was not built in a day. Slowly by slowly, we will get there. Let us do everything we can. Like, imagine I invite public teachers. I have invited public teachers in public schools to attend such sessions. If we had them today, they would learn something about inclusion. They would learn about the theory of mind, something they would always learn. So the opportunities we share, even like we are recording this session, we are going to put it on YouTube. So a teacher in a public school will get this information at some point, you know? So we are not yet there as people in public schools, but we will get there one day. We can just put all our efforts together and continue learning. Invite those teachers you know who are teaching in government schools. Let them come and attend this session. They will learn something that can go on. So let me give the mic back to Nsape. Over to you, Nsape.
Okay, Cowdens, that was a very powerful contribution as well. And we are 15 minutes to the end of our session, so I think we should be winding up. Oh, Philbert, so I saw your hand was up. Philbert, can you please unmute yourself and share something at least for a few minutes? Two, maybe.
Thank you so much, Nsape. Thank you so much, the speaker. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you well. Proceed.
Okay, thank you so much. Basing on the environment, today is not conducive here. I want to add something. I've been teaching these kind of pupils with neurodiverse learners. These pupils, I have learned something to them. When you are closer to them, these pupils, they have something, they are more talented. For example, I can give you a short story. It was like 2 days or 3 days back. It was last week before the national exam, before national exam. I have 3 pupils who are dyslexia. They have challenging dyslexic. Now, just imagine pupils themselves organizing themselves, being aware that that this is our friend. He has a need. We need not to segregate him, but we need to help him. So you may find sometimes other teachers, they come and discriminate the pupil, but pupils themselves, they are aware that this is our friend and we need to help him. We need to make him closer so as to we should not discriminate him. So I think there is a need also to raise awareness to other kids, other pupils, so as when they encounter with their friend who is a neurodiverse learner, who has a challenge in learning or difficulty in learning, because you may find a teacher, you may apply like these IEPs, individualized learning, you may apply different approaches, but to those pupils whom you are applying those approaches, what is their perception? We as educators, we need also to raise awareness, because I believe if you have a class with 40 pupils, I don't think so that all 40 pupils will be having the same level. Others will be higher, others maybe will be moderate, others will be maybe will have lower learning ability. So if you raise awareness, these pupils, they have something. They can also teach you, because just being a teacher doesn't mean that you will be there to deliver what you have. But sometimes you can learn from the pupils, as I have learned, as my pupils show me that they have something. But also, on top of that, I can add, as Cowdens have said, you have invited teachers from public schools. In schools, we have something called MEWAKA. MEWAKA, mafunzo endelevu kwa walimu kazini, something like that. I don't know it's English, how do we call it? But this we have training, progressive training for teachers who are at work. I think maybe to the teachers who are aware, or to the educators who are aware, maybe we can introduce it to our schools. And you may have the educators who are not ready to give you cooperation, but slow, when you impose it and you induce it, I believe if you are an educator and you want to bring changes to the society, if you'll be ready to accept the changes, then I believe we will be creating the environment whereby the knowledge will be spreading, and spreading. Thank you so much, Ntsape.
Can I quickly just jump in to echo what Philbert has said? And I think that's actually awesome, Philbert, what he's saying, and especially that thing around Mewaka, which would be like professional development. And maybe that's something that the people who spearhead Mewaka would really be encouraged to bring inclusion. Sorry, Nsape, can I quickly respond to some 3 questions that were asked earlier? I'm very keen on time.
Yes, you can do that quickly.
Okay, awesome. Someone had asked around large classrooms. How can we do this in large classrooms? So here's the thing, and I echo what Corden said. It's rather when you're informed, and then now you try to so you're informed, and then you're within a large classroom. You're able to identify and understand. This is how to tweak things for this specific student. Now, sure, small classroom sizes are the best when it comes to teaching or when it comes to inclusion, but I think we are a long way out when it comes to small classroom sizes, and that's a fact, and it's a fact when it comes to public schooling or public education system. So I think it's us teachers now understanding and being able to tweak which are these classroom strategies that we can impact or use within larger classroom sizes. And I think the more and I know this is a discussion that can go for a long time, like now inclusive strategies to use in the classroom. And you have strategies that you can use even as one teacher with 60 students to ensure that learning is child-led and learning is meaningful and learning is successful. So it's just being able to know, how do I do flexible grouping? What kind of feedback? How do I get feedback from the kids? How do I deliver the content to the students? What product will I be looking for from the students? So the moment you make it a learner-centered, the better it will be. So then the second question was, how do you work with school leadership that is not part of inclusion? Now, I love that question because I've been there. I've worked with the whole team, 5 people who inclusion was not even anything they wanted to hear, but data. So data is very powerful, and I knew that, and I use data all the time. I just don't talk about things that I do not have data on. So I'll be taking data, I'll be looking at this student and saying, hey, I've done these, okay, and then we have moved from point A to B, just plot that data. So the moment you have data across several weeks, it is very solid. And I'll use, for example, if I'm pushing for an intervention system and I'm saying, hey, I propose we be doing like 40 minutes daily of reading intervention for this small group of kids. I have to have data that I have done that for the past few weeks and there has been progress. And only when you have this data will you be able to move these leaders, because then they'll be like, oh, actually, yeah, you have the evidence that you've moved from that point to that point. But otherwise, I've learned that sometimes when you're pushing for approval without having that path that is already like you've gone through, sometimes it can be a little bit hard, and obviously leaders have different perspectives about different things, but when you have data, then leaders will be able to give you a green light on that. Now there's someone, I think Barbara asked around, have you met parents who do not agree that their kids is neurodiverse? Every day we meet parents who are who are at different points of the journey of their journeys when it comes to bringing up a neurodiverse child. Now it's not easy, and I often use a story where if you're going for holiday in Dar es Salaam, you'll pack like light clothes and bikini and shorts and vests, and then halfway through your flight, it just moves to Antarctica. And then you're in a cold place with your suitcase full of shorts and bikinis. It really requires a lot of strength and even like having strong resilience when it comes to your mental strength as a parent. So I believe meeting the parents where they are is the most important thing we can do as teachers, as educators, because one, if we are informed as educators to know that this is exactly where we want this child to be, but the parent is not on board, the child will lose if you keep fighting with the parent. Oh, this child is on the spectrum. This child is not. This child has this child. But meeting them where they are and saying, okay, can we work with this child and look at the needs that they have, see how we will work with the child. And if there's no progress, we can always revisit and review. And usually, most often when you do that and 6 weeks into an intervention, you tell the parents, hey, we have seen little progress, or we have not seen any progress. Can we bring a profession to kind of help us to know whether we are doing the right thing? You'll always find the parents are on board quicker when you've worked with them through that journey and you started where they were at. Because I think as educators, we are well conversant with some of these child development stages, and by just observing, you're able to know, hey, this child has delayed milestones, or this child is really struggling with these A, B, and C. So now it's being able to know, how do I navigate these with the parents, so we are all forming a team to support this child. And I always tell parents, we are not against each other. We shouldn't work against each other. We all love this child, and we should work to support this child. Sorry, I know we are 4 minutes out, and I hope I answered all the questions as fast as I could.
Okay, Kelvin. Administrator, I saw your hand was up. Perhaps you can use just a minute to share what you wanted to share. Administrator. Okay, maybe he or she just decided to put up something.
Can I just say
chat.
something?
So, administrator. Okay.
Yeah, maybe it's a good platform, it's a good presentation. Maybe next time in future, we can have a comparative. That is, we can have somebody from a public school. If somebody is willing, and you need to have a very big convincing power, so that we can have a comparative kind of approach, so that we can have what happens, because we might be asking people in international setup to give us what happens in public school. But if we have the real horse's mouth speaking to us that this is what happens, these are the kind of learners that we have, this is the population that we have in public schools, this is the kind of pedagogy that we use. If we can use this, or if we can, so that we can have a kind of a comparative, I think we might be arriving somewhere, because there's some of the questions that even me, I might not be in a position to answer if I'm not in a setup. So if possible, if we find a speaker who might be willing to come, even if it is 15 minutes, then we can have a speaker from the international setup, so that we can have at least a kind of an open discussion on how best this is done in both areas, so that now we can see where does the gap lies. Because it's a huge gap. Yes, we can't. Inclusion is an ocean where we can't swim and finish. I mean, and reach the other part of the ocean. So it requires a lot of things to come in place. It requires all the state, public, private, if it is international, national, so that we come on the drawing board and see, really, is what we are talking making sense in public school? Is what public schools are talking making sense in international setup? Is what the national people talking making sense in the international setup? Such kind of things. So I don't know how this is going to happen, but it would be very important for us to get also a speaker from the public. I mean, one of the schools that is managed by either local authorities, or I mean the government, and then we have maybe one that is maybe private, and then we can have one that is maybe international setup, following the international curriculum, maybe American curriculum, in international baccalaureate, and kind of the Cambridge or the Aero curriculum and the stuff. So it can be, and we can maybe have maybe lecturers who are teaching, the students in the university level, so that they can also give us some kind of, the new pedagogies and the stuff. So it can lead us somewhere. It can be a starting point for us. So it's just a food of thought. It's not a question. It's just a food of thought for us to think together towards, as we continue with this good kind of forums and the stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vincent. Okay, so it's almost time, but we can spare at least 3 or 4 minutes to gather up some final thoughts. Cowdens, I can see your hand is up, has been up for quite some time.
Thank you so much. I just want to take up the suggestion from Dr. Vincent, but I also kindly ask you, Kevin, if you don't mind, tomorrow, next week, Tuesday, if you can join so that we have that discussion. I'll get somebody from the government. I can get an education officer or I can get a teacher. It's possible to get. I have so many people in my network who can come in and speak for the government or the public sector, the public schools. So can we have this agreement that all of us who are in this meeting, please, can we join next week so that we continue the conversation? And also, you could come with somebody, invite a teacher, invite a friend, invite a parent, because this discussion is very, very important. Please, let's have a date next week. I'll have somebody from the government. And then Kevin, please, if you don't mind, join us again next week.
Yeah,
Thank
I'll
you.
join. And just to reckon, and I love what Vincent is saying, because when I moved away from so I also did a postgraduate in functional assessment and evaluation, and I joined the public system in Kenya. And these conversations I was having with IAC officers and people from the Ministry of Education, and I think it's a good conversation to have with those stakeholders who are really spearheading this whole thing around the public education. So I think it would be a great thing to have people join. So yeah, I'll be there. I'll be back in Tanzania, so I'll join.
Okay, nice, Kelvin.
Thank you, Kevin.
And I see already many people are putting some texts on the chat that they'll attend the next week's session, which is very promising and good. So for 30 seconds, Kenneth, for 30 seconds, please, I see your hand is up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the discussion we are having. All of us, as we go back to our stations, as we share in our staff rooms, let's embrace inclusion and let us try to encourage all of us that our language should be inclusive. We shouldn't be using some language that is discouraging or sidelining some learners. Let us try to encourage all of us in our staff rooms to be positive, like by saying, learner X can learn best in this. If we do this, learner X can do it better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. And Kenneth, I think I haven't seen you before. You are welcome. You can always join our sessions every Tuesday, the same time, 8 to 9 p.m. So you are welcome, and I'll put the link on the chat. Cadence, can you please help me put the link on the chat for him to join our group if he's not there yet? So as we are winding up, I can just give Kevin a minute or 30 seconds to give his final thoughts or anything that as your closing words.
So just closing words. I think one of the things that usually is very powerful for me is that every child deserves to access learning in a classroom. And I was chatting earlier with Cordence on WhatsApp, and I was telling her, like, kids access so much in the classroom, even when they have different challenges. It just doesn't mean they're not learning. Learning is happening, and I think we need to just reckon that it's doing that. So that's it. And yeah, it's so nice to be part of this group. And just, I think one last thing, I also sit as the chair of the African board of Special Education Needs Inclusion Association, which is a global community that's championing inclusion. So we are trying to organize like a teacher workshop on 24th of January next year, which will be on a Saturday. It will be a 6-hour workshop with people from Middle East and Europe and Africa, and we're just targeting teachers. And so if you guys are interested, I know it will be such a good learning experience. I'm always learning, and I believe, as Vincent at some point said, inclusion is an ocean. Even those people who have like 40 years experience, they are always like learning something new about inclusion. So well done, guys. Thank you so much. And it was nice being part of this. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you so much, Kelvin. Okay, now Cadence has put up a link on the chat. That link can get you to our WhatsApp support group. So for anyone who hasn't yet joined our support group, you are kindly welcome. You can join us. This is where we normally give updates on our sessions and, of course, updates on our work, on our day-to-day activities and what we do. So kindly keep on joining us and kindly keep on sharing the link with your networks, your friends. Ground for the next week's session. So I take this opportunity to welcome you all again. Please do not miss next week's session, and please welcome your friends and friends and friends. We really need numbers. We have always been talking about the need of us having numbers so that we keep on expanding our reach. Yeah. So that is final from me. Perhaps, Caudence, you have anything to say for 10 seconds?
I just want to thank everyone who joined the session. Let's keep learning, and thank you so much, Kevin. Have a good night.